basically, this is what has happened. Sophie Cunningham has tweeted, or Sophie Cunningham's sister tweeted out, maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on poor officiating, yada yada. And then somebody responded with protect athletes. Shut up, B word at her sister. When Sophie Cunningham took out JC Sheldon. Reality is, the referees dealt with it. Like, that's not, the complaint isn't that these things aren't happening. The complaints are that the referees are not dealing with it.
Sophie Cunningham isn't just launching threes in a mall. She's firing back at critics online, and people cannot stop talking. When players pull out the Twitter fingers, you know something went down. But this time, Sophie didn't hold back, and the fallout has been wild. So here's the question, was her clapback justified, or did she just pour gasoline on the fire?
And Sophie Cunningham, she's not afraid to call a spade a spade. She's not afraid to call it like it is. She's taken this opportunity with the Indiana Fever and has run with it. When it comes to on the court, she's performing. She's sticking up for her team. When it comes to off the court, she's getting the deals. She's getting the endorsements. She's got the podcast. And you better watch out, Twitter folks, because if you say something about Sophie's La Familia, oh, she's coming for you and coming for you.
Let's be honest. When Sophie Cunningham fired up the Twitter fingers, you knew subtlety was never on the menu. This is Sophie we're talking about. She's been muscling defenders on the court for years, and now she's muscling trolls online. And the timing? Absolutely priceless. Because when an athlete jumps on social media mid-season and starts clapping back, it usually signals one of two things. Either they are done listening to the noise, or they've got nothing left to lose. With Sophie, it feels like a little bit of both.
We have Lizzie Cunningham. I believe this is Sister C. Shout out to you, Sister C. WNBA, maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game and protect your athletes. Pathetic. Praying for you. Then we have Twitter Troll 101 say, quote, protect athletes, talking to Sophie Cunningham's sister, calls her the B word and tells her to shut up. And you had to know Sophie Cunningham is not going to let this slide. Sophie Cunningham is not going to let this slide and not let it slide as she did. She said, some of us were raised by the words of don't bite off more than you can chew, and some of us didn't. Quote, F around and find out, with a video of her throwing JC Sheldon.
Now, let's rewind. This all kicked off after that infamous play with JCS Sheldon. Sophie went in, things got physical, like welcome to the WNBA physical. And suddenly the refs are blowing whistles, Twitter is exploding, and love to hate. There's no middle ground. She's the one who'll drain a corner three, then bark at the opposing bench just to remind them she's hey. She's fiery, she's unapologetic, and she doesn't exactly fit the league's polished PR mold. So after all the noise online, Sophie, or really Sophie plus her sister, finally fired back. And oh, she did not hold back. People were mocking her, calling her doty, even saying she didn't belong in the league. And her sister's tweet pretty much said what Sophie probably wanted to scream herself. Maybe stop worrying about Sophie and start worrying about the refs actually doing their jobs. Which, to be fair, is something plenty of players agree with, even if they don't always say it out loud.
And Sophie Cunningham even blows her the nice kiss emoji. Oh, shout out to Sophie Cunningham, man. Shout out to Sophie Cunningham. And then we have from her.
You're dumb as shit.
Yeah.
You're literally dumb as fuck. You're dumb as shit.
Yeah.
You're literally dumb as fuck.
Because here's the thing. Sophie got tossed for that play and everyone shouted, justice served. Fine. But where was that same outrage when Bria Hartley dragged Angel Reese down by her hair? Where was that same reaction when Hartley undercut players against Seattle and still stayed in the game? The WNBA's problem isn't that Sophie's fouls get called. It's that the whistle feels inconsistent everywhere else. Sophie gets punished on the spot, while others skate by with nothing more than warnings. And that double standard is what fuels half these online battles. Sophie calling it out only pulled the curtain back on what so many already knew.
Like, there's an entire thread of Bria Hartley committing dirty plays. And Bria Hartley has not been chucked out for most of them. For the majority of the dirty stuff Bria Hartley's done, she's not been chucked out. Sophie Cunningham rightfully got chucked for this. She got chucked for this. Anytime Sophie Cunningham does something that is technical foul worthy, she gets a technical foul. That is the referees doing their job. The referees doing their job is not preventing anything happening. The referees doing their job is making sure they call the right things and that they stop any complete escalation. The only thing the referees did wrong was allow Marina Mabrey stay on the floor. JC Sheldon should have been, like, the reality is that JC Sheldon and Marina Mabrey, JC Sheldon should have been given a flagrant foul, and Marina Mabrey should have been ejected.
Now, Sophie's Twitter moment wasn't some novel-length rant, but it didn't need to be. It was sharp, quick, and loaded with that don't mess with me energy. And of course, the replies split right down the middle. Half the fans cheered, "Yes, Queen, tell them." The other half doubled down with, "You doty. Sit down." That's Sophie's career in one snapshot, polarizing, messy, and always entertaining. But here's where it gets interesting. Sophie doesn't usually fire back this directly. She'll retweet. She'll like a post. Maybe toss in a sarcastic emoji. But a full clapback, rare, which makes this feel different. Almost like she knows something's up. Maybe she's hurt. Maybe she's frustrated. Maybe she feels targeted. Because players don't just wake up ready to roll in the mud with fans unless they've already had enough. And Sophie stepping out of character like this suggests she's hit that breaking point. Now, let's shift to her actual image in the league. Sophie Cunningham isn't a superstar by stat sheet standards. She's not dropping 30 a night. But popularity in sports has never been just about numbers, it's about presence. Dennis Rodman wasn't pouring in 40 either, yet you couldn't stop talking about him. Angel Reese isn't a top 10 player by advanced metrics, but she's already one of the league's faces. Sophie lives in that same lane. By pure basketball ranking, she lands somewhere in the 50s. But by marketability and fan discussion, top 10 easily. People love to hate her, and that's a brand all on its own. And she's producing, too. Let's not pretend she isn't. She's second in true shooting percentage, knocking down threes, and she's become an elite role player for a Fever squad desperate for consistency around Caitlin Clark. And speaking of Clark, don't forget Sophie's role in that entire story. Clark is clearly the centerpiece of Indiana's rebuild, but Sophie's been the one spacing the floor, pulling defenders, and quietly being the glue piece that rarely gets credit. So, sure, people can call her doty all day, but she's also productive, and coaches love that mix. Now, back to the Twitter storm. Fans started digging up old clips, cutting together foul compilations, and branding her as the WNBA's official villain. You know what that reminds me of? Every league has one. The NBA had Bill Lambeau and the Bad Boys. The NFL had guys like Vontaze Burfict. Sports thrive when there's someone you love to hate. And right now, Sophie Cunningham wears that crown perfectly. The problem is, she doesn't want to be boxed in as just a goon. She wants respect as both a shooter and a competitor. And when fans shrink her entire career down to doty plays, you understand why she finally snapped. Her clapback wasn't about denying what happened. It was about context. She was basically saying, if I'm going to be labeled dirty, fine, but at least make sure the refs call it both ways. And that's fair, because inconsistency is what truly drives players mad. Imagine getting tossed for a flagrant while watching someone else undercut two players in a single week and stay on the floor. It makes no sense. And players aren't just going to stay silent forever. Another layer to this is the culture around women's sports and physicality. People claim they want women's leagues to be tougher, grittier, more fiery. But the moment someone like Sophie plays with an edge, suddenly she's branded dirty or classless. That's the double standard. And Sophie's response called it out, without her ever needing to write a long essay. But here's the bigger takeaway. This whole moment shows just how much the WNBA has changed in terms of spotlight and attention. 10 years ago, a Sophie Cunningham clapback wouldn't have made a headline. Now, with Caitlin Clark is bringing in millions of eyes, and with that, every single moment gets magnified. The cameras catch every foul. The Twitter accounts amplify every post. And suddenly, Sophie Cunningham versus random trolls turns into a trending storyline. That kind of spotlight can either make you or break you. And Sophie, she seems to be leaning into it rather than backing away. But here's the concern. When athletes go heavy on social media mid-season, it usually signals something deeper isn't right. Maybe it's health. Maybe it's locker room friction. Maybe it's just pure frustration. Whatever the case, Sophie's tone online felt like someone not in the best place physically or mentally. She's been a warrior on the court, no doubt. But firing back like this gave off the vibe of a player who knows the critics have ammo, because she's not 100% right now. And let's be clear, if Sophie misses time, the Fever are in real trouble. They've already been shaky. Even with Caitlin Clark putting up huge numbers, they still need Sophie's shooting and her edge. Without her, defenses collapse harder on Clark, and the offense risks stalling. That's the basketball side. The other side, the brand side. Sophie's sitting means less content, less controversy, and honestly, the WNBA loses one of its biggest conversation starters. So, did Sophie go too far with her clapback? Depends on who you ask. Her fans say she was just standing her ground. Her haters say she simply can't take the heat. But at the end of the day, all she really did was prove once again that she moves the needle. You don't get thousands of people arguing about you unless you matter. And Sophie Cunningham, love her or hate her, absolutely matters right now. Here's the twist about all this. Sophie's Twitter fingers moment is bigger than a single clapback. It's turned into a mirror reflecting everything wrong, and sometimes hilariously wrong, about the WNBA. Because the truth is, Sophie isn't the only one frustrated. She's just the one bold enough to actually say it. And let's be real, we need people like that. When everyone else tiptoes on eggshells, the one person stomping through the room becomes unforgettable. That's Sophie. Now, some say she's toxic, she's messy, she's hurting women's basketball. Okay, let's flip it. Since when has controversy ever been bad for sports? The NBA was built on feuds. Magic versus Bird. MJ versus the Bad Boys. LeBron versus literally anyone on Twitter drama sells, and fans eat it up. So when Sophie fires off a clapback, that's not killing the league. That's keeping the lights on. Because here's the truth, casual fans don't tune in for polite layups and friendly handshakes. They tune in for chaos. They tune in for villains. And Sophie Cunningham just stamped her name on that list. And don't forget, the timing couldn't be any wilder. The WNBA is still trying to navigate the Caitlin Clark effect. Record-breaking viewership, packed arenas, sold-out merch, and alongside all of it, non-stop controversy. Clark gets fouled hard. Trending. Angel Reese stays someone down. Trending. Sophie Cunningham claps back. Trending. Honestly, the league should be grateful, because for the first time ever, WNBA discourse is dominating ESPN, Fox News, even political podcasts. That's insane. And yes, it's messy, but it's also the best free promotion the league has ever seen. Still, let's zero in on Sophie, because her story shines a light on another issue, respect. She's been in the league since 2019. A vet by now, but since she's not one of the league's chosen stars, every slip she makes gets magnified. Meanwhile, someone like AJA Wilson or Brianna. Back, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Every hard foul, every bump, every hand check, fey or not, is going to be framed as proof that Sophie's the villain. That's the trap of leaning into controversy. But at the same time, it's also the gift. Because now, whether you love her or hate her, you're watching. And in sports, that's the whole game. Sophie Cunningham has become more than a role player, she's become a storyline. And the WNBA, a league that's fighting for every headline, needs storylines. That's why this whole saga matters. It's not about one foul or one clapback. It's about what Sophie represents, the double standards, the media frenzy, the blurred line between tough and dirty, and the undeniable fact that chaos keeps people glued to the screen. At the end of the day, Sophie might not win every argument online, but she's already won something bigger, relevance. And in the world of pro sports, relevance is everything. Back, you don't get to steer the story anymore. The trolls take the wheel. And Sophie, whether it helps her or haunts her, just gave them enough fuel to last the entire season. But maybe that's exactly what makes her stand out. She's not chasing image control. She's not Caitlin Clark carefully walking the PR tightrope. She's not AJA Wilson delivering picture-perfect answers in every press conference. She's Sophie Cunningham, loud, bold, and utterly unbothered by whether you approve. And honestly, that kind of raw honesty might be the sharpest brand move of all, because fans hate fake. They smell it a mile away. And Sophie? She's not fake. What you see is exactly what you get. That's why her clapback landed so hard. It was pure, unfiltered. Of course, now the WNBA is stuck in the funniest kind of bind. They want the lead polished, professional, clean enough to sell. But they also crave personalities that keep fans hooked. And here comes Sophie, handing them both a headache and a gift. She's the chaos agent they never asked for, but absolutely cannot live without. And deep down, they know it. That's why, for all the outrage, the league won't silence her, because they can't. Now, pull back for a moment, because while Sophie grabs the headlines today, this is really one chapter in the biggest story of the WNBA's growing pains. With Caitlin Clark in the mix, the spotlight burns hotter than ever. And with that spotlight comes pressure. Every foul, every stare, every clapback, it all gets magnified. Players who once played in the shadows are suddenly front-page stories. And not everyone is built to carry that weight. Sophie just showed she'll carry it her way. And whether fans cheer or boo, they'll keep her name in their mouths. So, was it a smart move? On the court? Maybe not. Off the court? Absolutely. She just went from role player to main character. And in today's sports culture, being the main character is sometimes worth more than being the all-star. That's how you sell jerseys, land interviews, stay trending. That's how careers last now, not just through stats, but through relevance. And here's the kicker. Sophie Cunningham's clapback isn't just about her, it's about the WNBA's future. The league is standing at a crossroads. Do they lean into the chaos, the drama, the fire? Or do they keep sanding every edge down into a polished box? Because if they choose the second path, they risk losing the one thing driving their surge, conversation. Love her or hate her, Sophie delivered exactly that. So here's the real question. Did her clapback expose the WNBA's double standards, or did she hand her critics the win? Either way, she made sure her name won't vanish anytime soon.